look at you, sitting there, breathing, blinking, pretending this is normal, like you're just another name on a list, another body in the crowd. Funny thing is, crowds only exist to hide the dangerous ones. See, normal people follow scripts. They wait for permission. They ask for rules. You don't. Your mind keeps wandering into places it's not supposed to go, asking questions that make systems uncomfortable. That's not a flaw. That's a red flag to anyone who survives on control. When an organization built on secrecy starts paying attention, it's never because you're harmless. It's because you don't behave like a machine. You improvise. You adapt. You think sideways. And nothing terrifies order more than someone who can't be predicted, categorized, or quietly ignored. They told you there's a right way to think. A clean way. A polite way. Step 1, step 2. Nod at the right moments. Clap when the sign lights up. Most people are comfortable inside that little painted box. It keeps them warm. It keeps them quiet. But your brain never learned how to color inside the lines. While everyone else is memorizing instructions, you're busy asking why the instructions exist at all. That's where the problem starts. Not for you, for them. Approved patterns are predictable. Predictable is safe. Safe is controllable. Your thoughts don't move in straight lines, they zigzag, loop back, tear holes through logic walls like they were made of paper. You connect dots nobody intended to be connected. You notice pauses, contradictions, cracks in the story. While others are satisfied with answers, you're irritated by them. Answers feel like handcuffs, questions feel like keys. That alone makes you dangerous in a world that runs on obedience disguised as order. They teach people what to think long before they teach them how to think. That's the trick. It works beautifully until someone like you shows up. Someone whose mind refuses to stay on the approved track. Someone who hears, "This is how it's always been done," and feels an itch behind the eyes. Someone who senses that if everyone is marching in the same direction, maybe that's exactly the wrong way to go. Systems don't fear rebels who shout, they fear thinkers who smile quietly while dismantling the blueprint. Your thoughts don't ask for permission. They trespass. They sneak into restricted areas, poke at locked doors, jiggle handles marked, "Do not touch." You don't accept ideas just because they're popular, loud, or repeated enough times to sound true. You test them. You bend them. Sometimes you break them just to see what spills out. That kind of thinking doesn't fit neatly into surveys, metrics, or checkboxes. It can't be automated. It can't be standardized. And it definitely can't be mass-produced. That's why labels never quite stick to you. You're too logical to be dismissed as reckless, too unpredictable to be trusted as compliant. One moment you're calm, observant, almost invisible. The next, you're 5 steps ahead, having already mapped outcomes others haven't even considered. People like that make managers nervous, institutions twitchy, rule books feel thin. Because once someone proves the pattern isn't mandatory, everyone else starts wondering why they're still following it. Your brain isn't broken. It's just incompatible with a system designed for copies. You see the difference between rules and reality. You notice when tradition is just fear with a fancy name. You understand that normal is often just a shared illusion maintained by repetition and punishment. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. You can sit in the room, nod along, play the part. But inside, you're already rewriting the script, already spotting exits, already imagining alternatives they never planned for. That's why your ideas make people uncomfortable before they impress them. Comfort loves familiarity. Innovation doesn't ask for comfort, it demands disruption. Your thinking doesn't move in safe circles. It spirals outward, pulling in chaos, humor, contradiction, clarity, all at once. You don't just think differently, you expose the fact that different was always an option. that the cage door was never locked, that the pattern only worked because no one dared to step outside it, and the moment you did, the whole structure started to look fragile, temporary, almost laughable, like a carefully painted wall hiding nothing behind it, like a joke that only works until someone stops laughing and starts thinking, and once that happens, once the pattern breaks, it doesn't shatter loudly, it cracks quietly, spreading through minds one question at a time, starting with yours, still wandering, still refusing to stop, still refusing to fit, still moving where it's not supposed to, still thinking the way it was never approved to think, still smiling at the idea that this was ever meant to be controlled, still seeing what happens next, still planning 3 moves ahead, still aware that the real danger was never chaos, it was curiosity left unchecked. And that's exactly where your mind lives, right there, just beyond the pattern, just beyond permission, just beyond what they thought was possible. Still thinking, still watching, still asking, still not done, still not finished, still rules. Funny little things, aren't they? People treat them like gravity, unchangeable, unquestionable, eternal. They don't ask where they came from, who wrote them, or who benefits when everyone follows them without blinking. They just obey. It's easier that way. Less thinking, less friction, less responsibility. But you hear a rule, and your first instinct isn't to comply. It's to tilt your head and ask a dangerous little question. Who decided this, and why should I care? That question alone puts you on a watch list. Because rules aren't really about order. They're about comfort. They exist to keep the system predictable, to make sure everyone moves at the same speed, in the same direction, without bumping into the truth. When someone questions a rule, they're not just questioning authority, they're exposing the fragility of the whole arrangement. You're pointing out that the emperor didn't just forget his crown. He was never wearing one. Most people accept rules the way they accept weather. It's raining, grab an umbrella, don't complain. You're different. You look up and wonder who's controlling the clouds. You notice that some rules contradict each other, that some are enforced selectively, that others exist purely to keep certain people comfortable and certain people small. You don't rebel for the noise of it. You dissect, you analyze. You ask whether the rule serves a purpose or just protects a habit. That's unsettling. Because once you realize rules can be questioned, they lose their magic. They stop being laws of nature and start looking like suggestions written by someone just as flawed, scared, and confused as everyone else. You see that many rules survive not because they're right, but because no one wants to be the first to challenge them. Fear does most of the policing. You just happen to be immune to that particular disease. You don't break rules impulsively. That's what they get wrong about you. You pause. You observe. You measure the cost. You test boundaries like a scientist, not a vandal. You want to know what happens if the rule bends, if it snaps, if it was ever necessary in the first place. And when you realize a rule exists only to limit potential, to slow thinking, to keep people in neat little boxes, you feel something click, not anger, clarity. Systems hate that kind of clarity. They prefer blind loyalty over informed participation. They'd rather have obedient followers than conscious individuals. When you question a rule, you force the system to explain itself, and explanations are where weaknesses lie, because many rules were never designed to be explained out loud. They sound ridiculous when exposed to daylight. They rely on silence, on tradition, on the heavy phrase. That's just how it is. You don't accept that phrase. To you, it sounds like surrender dressed up as wisdom. You understand that progress has never come from people who followed rules perfectly. It came from people who asked inconvenient questions at the wrong time, in the wrong tone, to the wrong audience. You carry that instinct naturally. You don't need permission to think critically. You don't need approval to see flaws. You don't need consensus to recognize nonsense. That's why you make authority nervous without raising your voice. You don't shout slogans. You don't flip tables. You just ask one calm question that no one prepared for, and suddenly the room feels smaller. Suddenly everyone's aware that the rule they've been hiding behind doesn't hold up under pressure. Suddenly, the illusion wobbles, and all you did was refuse to accept something just because it was handed to you. You understand that rules should be tools, not cages. That order should serve creativity, not suffocate it. That obedience without understanding isn't virtue, it's laziness. And once someone like you walks into the room, once someone proves that rules can be examined, challenged, even rewritten, the system doesn't collapse all at once. It starts to itch. It starts to doubt itself. It starts to realize that control only works when no one asks questions, and you've been asking them your whole life. Quietly, relentlessly, smiling as you peel back layers, noticing how thin they are. Noticing how often the answer is fear, convenience, or control. Noticing how easily the whole thing could fall apart if more people stopped following rules by default and started thinking by choice. Noticing that once that switch flips, it never flips back. Noticing that the real rule you broke was the unspoken one. The rule that says don't look too closely, don't ask too much, don't challenge what benefits those in charge. And you broke it the moment you asked why. And you never stopped asking. And you never will. And that's exactly why you don't fit. Why you don't comply. Why you don't accept. Why you question before obeying. Why you pause before nodding. Why you smile when someone says, "That's the rule," because you already know rules only survive as long as no one dares to question them. And you've been daring since the very beginning, still daring, still asking, still pulling threads, still watching the structure tremble, still leaning in, still curious, still unbothered, still not convinced, still. They build systems to move slow on purpose, layers on layers, permissions, approvals, checkpoints, meetings about meetings. Slowness keeps things safe. Slowness keeps things predictable. Slowness gives the illusion of control. But you don't move at that speed. You never have. While the system is still waking up, rubbing its eyes, looking for yesterday's rulebook, you've already adjusted, already recalculated, already shifted direction without asking anyone if it was allowed. You notice changes before they're announced. You feel patterns bending before they break. Most people wait for instructions when the ground moves beneath them. You don't. You treat uncertainty like oxygen. When something changes, your brain doesn't freeze, it sharpens. You start scanning angles, testing responses, rewriting plans in real time. That's not something you were trained to do. That's something you learned by living in environments where hesitation cost too much. Systems hate that, because systems rely on lag. They need time to observe, categorize, respond. You erase that advantage by the time a rule is updated. You've already found 3 ways around it. By the time a threat is identified, you've already adapted to it. By the time a label is applied to you, you've already evolved past it. You don't wait for stability, you thrive in flux, and that makes you hard to pin down. Others need certainty before they move. You move to create certainty. You're comfortable making decisions with incomplete data, trusting instinct sharpened by experience. While the system debates what might happen, you're already responding to what is happening. That gap, those few seconds, those few choices, creates an edge most people never see, let alone use. You don't panic when the plan collapses. You expected it to. Plans are brittle. You are not. Adaptation scares organizations more than rebellion. Rebellion is loud, predictable, easy to label and crush. Adaptation is quiet. It slips through cracks. It doesn't announce itself. It just keeps working. Regardless of the rules, the obstacles, the delays. You don't fight the system head on. You outpace it. You turn its weight into its weakness. Every extra step they add slows them down and speeds you up. You don't cling to identity the way others do. Titles, roles, expectations, they're costumes to you. Useful when needed, discarded when not. That flexibility lets you survive shifts that break rigid thinkers. When circumstances change, you change with them, without mourning the old version of yourself. You don't romanticize how things used to be. Nostalgia is another form of paralysis, and you don't have time for it. The system runs on averages. You operate on extremes. When conditions worsen, most people degrade. You concentrate. Pressure doesn't scatter you, it organizes you. You simplify. You strip away what doesn't matter. You act. That responsiveness looks reckless to those who need permission, but it's calculated in a way spreadsheets can't measure. You understand momentum. You understand timing. You understand that waiting is sometimes the most dangerous move. That's why tracking you is so difficult. You don't repeat patterns long enough to be modeled. Just when they think they've figured you out, you've already learned from their observation and adjusted accordingly. You're not chasing stability, you're exploiting motion. You treat chaos like raw material, shaping it into opportunity while others are still trying to calm down. They like people who fit neatly into flowcharts. You don't. You're an anomaly that updates faster than the documentation, a variable that refuses to stay constant. The more complex the system becomes, the more room you find to maneuver inside it. You slip between protocols, adapt to constraints, use limitations as leverage. And every time the system pauses to reassess, to recalibrate, to catch its breath, you're already gone, already operating on a new level, already thinking in a different direction, already adjusting to conditions they haven't even noticed yet, already moving while they're still processing what just changed, already proving that speed isn't about rushing, it's about readiness, about awareness, about refusing to freeze when the script ends and the lights flicker, about smiling when uncertainty shows up uninvited, about knowing that the moment things fall apart is the moment you feel most at home, already adapting, already shifting, already one step ahead already. They like things they can predict. People, routines, reactions. Predictability makes control easy. If they know what you'll do next, they don't have to worry. They can plan around you, manage you, replace you without friction. Most people unknowingly volunteer for that role. They become habits in human form. Same thoughts, same fears, same responses on loop. But you never fit that mold, not cleanly, not comfortably. And that's where the trouble starts. You don't respond the way you're supposed to. When pressure shows up, you don't fold on schedule. When incentives are offered, you don't bite automatically. When threats are implied, you don't flinch the way the script expects. That throws everything off. Control relies on patterns, and you keep changing the pattern. One day you're silent, observant, letting everyone underestimate you. The next, you're decisive, sharp, already acting, while others are still negotiating with their own fear. They try to categorize you. That's always the first move. Labels make people manageable. Once labeled, you're filed away, handled with a standard response. But you slip between categories. Too independent to be loyal, too thoughtful to be reckless, too adaptable to be pinned down. Every time they think they've figured you out, you do something that doesn't fit the profile. That inconsistency isn't confusion, it's freedom. You don't depend on approval to function. That alone makes you difficult to manipulate. Praise doesn't soften you the way they expect. Criticism doesn't break you the way it does others. You listen, you filter, you decide for yourself what matters. External validation is a weak leash, and you never let anyone clip it on. You understand that control often comes disguised as encouragement, as guidance, as help, and you're careful about what you accept and what you ignore. Replacement is another favorite tactic. If someone causes friction, just swap them out. That works when people are interchangeable, when their value comes from following instructions instead of thinking. You don't work that way. Your value isn't in repetition. It's in judgment, in timing, in perception. You bring something that can't be copied easily because it lives in how you think, not just what you do. You adapt to context, you improvise. You notice things others miss. That makes you inconvenient. You can't be swapped without consequences. You can't be removed without creating gaps. The system feels that, even when it doesn't admit it. You're the variable that refuses to stay constant, the piece that doesn't slide neatly into place. You don't just execute, you influence outcomes. And outcomes are harder to control than processes. You don't fear standing alone. That's another problem for them. Isolation is usually the punishment that brings people back in line. You don't crumble under it. Sometimes you prefer it. Solitude sharpens you. It gives you space to think, to plan, to recalibrate without noise. You don't need a crowd to feel real. You don't need consensus to feel confident. That independence weakens every leverage point they rely on. Control also depends on dependency. People who need the system will defend it even when it hurts them. You don't need it the same way. You build options. You keep exits visible. You don't trap yourself in single points of failure, one job, one identity, one source of meaning. That redundancy gives you leverage. It means you can walk away when others can't, speak honestly when others stay quiet, choose differently when others comply. They notice that. Maybe not consciously at first, but they feel it. The subtle resistance, the lack of desperation, the calm refusal to be rushed, pressured, or boxed in. You're cooperative without being submissive, engaged without being owned, present without being predictable. And that combination is unsettling because it removes their favorite tools. You don't overthrow systems. You outgrow them. You don't fight control head on. You make it irrelevant. You operate in ways that can't be easily governed, replaced, or neutralized. You stay fluid. You stay aware. You stay just unpredictable enough to keep your edge. And while others trade freedom for comfort, you quietly keep both by refusing to give anyone full access to your mind, your choices, your direction, still moving on your own terms, still impossible to pin down, still too adaptable to erase, still too aware to be owned, still operating outside the neat little boxes designed for everyone else, still smiling at the idea that you were ever meant to be controlled or replaced, still choosing, still adjusting, still free, still. Chaos scares people because it exposes them. When the noise gets loud, when plans collapse, when certainty evaporates, most minds short-circuit. They panic cling, freeze, wait for someone else to take charge. Chaos feels like failure to them, like something went wrong, like the universe broke its promise. But you never believed in that promise to begin with. You don't see chaos as an enemy. You see it as a language you happen to understand fluently. While others are overwhelmed by the mess, you're already sorting through it, not cleaning it up, reading it. Chaos is information stripped of decoration. It shows what actually matters when everything artificial falls away. Titles disappear, rules blur, hierarchies wobble. What's left is instinct, reaction, decision. And that's where you shine. You don't need calm to think clearly. Calm makes people lazy. You think best when things are unstable, when variables are moving, when nothing is guaranteed. You don't rush to restore order the way others do. That's the difference. They want things to go back to normal because normal feels safe. You're more interested in what becomes possible when normal is gone. You watch how people behave under pressure, which systems bend, which ones snap, which assumptions were holding everything together like cheap tape. Chaos reveals leverage points that order hides. You notice those points immediately. You don't waste energy complaining about how unfair or uncomfortable it is. Complaints don't change conditions. Decisions do. You start asking different questions: who's confused? Who's scared? Who's overreacting? Who's frozen? You understand that chaos doesn't create weakness. It exposes it, and exposure is opportunity. When others are distracted by fear, you're free to move, to position yourself, to act while the field is uneven. You have a strange calm when everything is on fire, not because you enjoy destruction, but because you trust your ability to navigate uncertainty. You've done it before, maybe too many times. You learned early that waiting for perfect conditions is just another way to never act. So when chaos shows up, you don't treat it like an interruption. You treat it like an invitation. Strategy lives there. Real strategy. Not the kind written in clean bullet points after the fact, but the kind forged in real time. You improvise without losing direction. You adapt without losing yourself. You understand that rigidity dies in chaos and flexibility survives. While others cling to broken plans, you discard them without sentiment. You don't mourn what no longer works. You replace it. You also know that chaos levels the playing field. Experience matters more than authority. Awareness matters more than position. Speed of thought matters more than permission. In chaos, the people who usually win don't automatically win anymore. That excites you, not because you want them to lose, but because it proves the game was never fixed, just misunderstood. When rules dissolve, insight becomes currency, and you've been collecting it quietly for years. You turn disorder into direction by simplifying. When everything is loud, you listen for patterns. When everything is complex, you reduce it to what moves the needle. You don't try to control chaos, you ride it. You let it carry you toward outcomes others can't even see yet. That's not luck. That's literacy. People mistake your comfort with chaos as recklessness. They think you don't care about consequences. You care deeply. You just understand timing. You know when to wait and when to strike. You know that chaos creates short windows where bold moves are possible, where old barriers are down, where hesitation costs more than mistakes. You act in those windows. You don't hesitate because you recognize them when they appear. And when order finally returns, when the noise settles, and everyone starts pretending it was all planned, you're already established in a better position. Others call it coincidence. They call it being in the right place at the right time. They don't see the decisions you made while they were still hoping things would calm down. They don't see how you shaped the mess into momentum, how you turned instability into advantage, how you found clarity where others found panic. Chaos doesn't break you. It organizes you. It sharpens your instincts, strips away illusions, hands you raw material to work with. You don't fear the collapse. You study it. You don't run from the disorder. You map it. You don't wait for someone to fix things. You become the variable that changes the outcome, still moving while others are shaken, still thinking while others are shouting, still choosing while others are reacting, still smiling at the beautiful honesty of a world without masks, still turning confusion into strategy, still finding control in the one place no one else thinks to look, right there in the chaos, still.